deployed in support of Operation Inherent Resolve from 2016 to 2017 as part of Special Operations Task Force. We were conducting counterterrorism operations for the counter Islamic State mission in Iraq. I was the Special Activities Director for the Special Operations Task Force, and what that meant, I was a Special Staff Officer reporting to the 05 Commander, the Lieutenant Colonel Commander of the task force, and was his principal advisor on all what we call sensitive special activities. Dual-hatted that was I was a team leader for all of our outstations that had special activities platforms there as well too. At that time, I was leading a total of 8 people, both sailors and Marines. Of those 8 people, only 2 were geographically located with me. Others were located all throughout Iraq, 6 others that were at different remote outstations, and I had very difficult comms with them at times. So kind of in that role, my boss was geographically located with me, but the kind of interesting thing to understand was, in that special staff officer role, I reported directly to the task force commander, the 05 commander, by the same task force intelligence officer. He was my actually direct supervisor. So he conducted my performance reviews. He was my administrative oversight. He was my reporting senior, and he was geographically located with me, and I was also geographically located with the task force commander as well too. Communications was very difficult with the remote outstations at times. This is due to the change in the volatile and ever-changing operating environment that we're in. Our mission, I wouldn't say turned halfway through, but our mission at the beginning was what we call preparation of the environment for a large combat operation. So the first 2 or 3 months was preparing the environment for follow-on large combat operations for our partner force. So that made it more difficult because we were, day-to-day activities, my team members were either, a phone call away or an email away, or it's pretty easy to get in touch with them. But once, our operation tempo greatly increased, I was either away out on an operation, or my team members were out on operation, and sometimes those would last a week at a time, and it made communications very difficult. In one case, one of my outstations, he would pretty much only be in the office 1 day a week, so he had to try to catch up on everything during that week and still meet our demanding requirements, and me trying to communicate what was needed for him down from our higher headquarters and over phone call and email, and it was very difficult. And I tried to make it out to each outstation at least once a month. As their leader, I wanted some face-to-face time with them. But there was restrictions with that. We were sometimes, I could either take a helicopter there to get there or drive. Some of those drives are about 4 hours one way, so I'd have to stay the night usually. Our schedule, matched up schedules was difficult sometimes, and plus there was restrictions on I needed 4 people to come along with me, so I'm taking people from my office, the 2 located that were with me, away from their day-to-day duties and jobs, and trying to find another person to grab, because the vehicle requirements, we have to have 2 vehicles and a minimum of 4 people to travel around the area of operations. So that was a strain to try to meet that, my goal to see everyone face-to-face at least once a month. And plus, sometimes they would come to me, so that was great too, because we were the task force headquarters, so they had to come to us for logistical resupply sometimes. So my guys would jump on those movements as well and try to, we would spend some time together while the rest of their team was getting supplies and things. It did cause challenges, I think, communication-wise. Our team formed about 9 months prior to the deployment, so I got a chance to see, and during that time I only had 4 of my direct reports who were going to be with me on deployment, with me at that time. And then the rest of the direct reports didn't really join the team until maybe about a month before deployment, and some actually joined while we were on deployment because they coming from a different organization. So when we joined together as the task force, they joined us late. The 4 direct report Marines are with me. I was able to observe them during our 9-month pre-deployment training and the entire deployment. So that gave me a great, opportunity to kind of assess them, kind of give them guidance on where we were going and move forward. And as a leader, it was a great opportunity because we could, sat down with an intelligence officer because we were there during that entire 9-month workout together. So we were able to form great training schedules, meet demanding training requirements that we had together. In one case, one of the Marines, he was my poor performer of all my team members at that time. This is something I don't like to do as a leader, but I'll mention it because I think it's important because it kind of came to fruition. One of my peers, another warrant officer who was in the exact same position as me, part of a Marine Special Operations company the year prior, he had this same Marine and was one of his direct reports on that deployment. And he came up to me when we were forming our team. He's like, "Oh, I see you have so-and-so Marine." My peer warned me about him, saying that, watch out for him. He might do some things that aren't of the highest integrity, and, he has some control issues on insubordination issues, I guess you could say. And so, I had that warned on me, and I don't want to say it tainted me, but it put that in there. And I really don't like to do that. I like to form my own opinion because I want to as a leader, I want to approach everybody's with a blank slate and kind of set my expectations and let them live up to my expectations, not someone else's expectations. So that was in my head, but during the pre-deployment training, he performed well, but he was my lowest performer. So we took steps to correct that on whether it was because we write a lot of reports. So with that, he had to be clear, concise in his report writing, and some of that was of a lower par. So and that's part of that deployment too. So we kind of made sure he had to address some of those concerns, corrected his writing, corrected his performance. But him as a big strength was he integrated into his because the way we work is we integrate into Marine Special Operations teams, and as a Special Operations Capability Specialist, he integrated seamlessly into that team, and he had great support with that team as well too. But yeah, I was able to identify some of those, and during the deployment, some of those came more and more issues, and it all comes back to communication. I think communication is probably what causes the number one leadership failure, and that's all forms of communication, up, across, laterally, down. And that's what really kind of caused our failure. We weren't communicating effectively together, and I think that's how we needed to address a little further. The main issue that came about was about 2 or 3 months under deployment. He was working with a external organization from our task force, and communicating with that external organization's higher leadership, my counterpart over there, and he was communicating with his counterpart over there. And I was getting some feedback from that organization that was a little lackluster on what they thought of his performance. So that kind of caused issue, and there were certain things that, in order for us to move forward, certain authorities and permissions needs to be granted, and I needed for him to write a certain piece of paperwork that I didn't know all the details on. I could only write it to a certain level to help move forward his operation. So I needed him to come forward, and it was that timeline. It was like, yeah, he was gone for a week, and then he'd come back for a couple of days, like a day or two. So this other organization was really depending on us to come forward with this operation. It had a lot of impact to it. And because of his lack of performance to get that paperwork through, it caused a lot of issues with that external organization from ours. So I had to, correct him right there. I'm like, hey, I need you to stay back a week. You can't go out on this. We have to focus on this. Our task force commander wants this to happen. The other external organization wants this to happen. We really need to buckle down and get this done. I mentioned it, to my direct supervisor, the intelligence officer, and, I told him about the issue, and because he was on board with it. He was a big part of making sure that this happened. I got his blessing, to let him know that, yeah, this guy's not going to go forward. And that was our way to try to correct that action. It's like, okay, let's limit his operational tempo, pull back a little. But at the same time, the team he was embedded with was depending on that, so it had some, second, third order effects of keeping him back for that week. I think communication is probably what causes the number one leadership failure. And that's, all forms of communication, up, across, laterally, down.